Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens, Screenwriting Step by Step, number 20 in our series of trying to work from a rough idea all the way through to a pilot script so that you can see my process, hopefully a useful process, at least a thought-provoking process, something that might give you some ideas for how you can do your work. I am also here to answer questions should anybody come on live and have a question. If you do not have a question, I am here, by the way, every Monday, Friday, except if I can't do it that day, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And while I am here, you can ask me almost anything. But if for some reason you can't ask me live, that's okay. You can contact me through writingforscreens.com, my website. There is a contact me button on almost every page, and there's a whole dedicated tab for contact me. If you type a question into the contact me form, it will become an email that races right to me. Likewise, if you type a comment into this very video, I will get it, and I will do my best to answer you. In the next live stream, or if I can't do it then, I'll try and answer you directly in the comments. I will do everything I can to answer everyone I can, because that is my purpose here on YouTube. Alrighty, let us get back to our untitled podcast killer project. I have done a little bit of work on this because it was getting a bit ungainly. Hi, Mayank. Thank you. Sorry for the pronunciation. I will get to that question towards the end. Good question. Right now, we're going to talk a little bit about what I did with the outline, because the outline was getting ungainly. I was putting in every idea that I could think of for the entire series, which is cool, except I'm not at the moment writing the entire series. So what I needed to do was divide my outline into a pilot outline, which is just the incidents that are in the pilot, beginning with the introduction of the story where we meet the serial killer case and watch George die, all the way through Zach and trying to get the files, meeting Norman and Madeline, who become lovers very quickly. And then Madeline discovers the clue that will help identify the killer, which brings her into the team. And then the killer contacts them and says, "Cut it out." And that is the end of the pilot. So that's the end of the pilot outline. Everything else, everything that didn't fit in there, I'm putting here in outline spare parts. There we go. Outline spare parts. All that other stuff that I was thinking about, stuff that happens at the end, stuff that happens in the middle, all of that stuff I'm putting here, because I'm going to have to find a format in which to suggest it to whatever company I'm going to show this pilot to, because this is how this works. When you have a pilot script, they want to read the pilot, they want to get the pilot, they want to get a good idea of what the pilot is like in style, in tone, in content, and they want to understand the main characters and what the hook is, and all of that should be in the pilot. A good pilot establishes the world and the premise and the story idea, and it usually ends with some twist or hook or revelation that says to the audience, you're going to want to watch more of this. But the rest of it is unwritten as yet. And so what you need to do is put together a document which you are going to give to the companies who like the pilot, and they say, well, where does this go? And So therefore, I'm going to need to take this outline of spare parts and turn it into something that is not a script. It's going to be a pitch document, a Bible document. There's a lot of these documents out there on the internet. You can search for them. I'll try and refer to them when I can. But basically, it's a proposal for the series. It's the overview of the series, and the style of it is completely flexible. Different people have done different things. Famously, Stranger Things did a sort of graphic proposal, which looked like an old paperback from the 80s. It was not really a very good summary of what was going to happen, but it was really snazzy looking. Sometimes these are sort of philosophical documents. Sometimes they are little story outlines. Every show does it differently. Every showrunner does it differently. So I'm going to have to figure out how to do that here with you, in front of you. But for the moment, the way I did it was to take everything that's going to happen after the pilot, put it in a separate outline so that I can not worry about it while I'm working on the pilot. Pilot scripts have an awful lot of demands made on them. They have to establish an awful lot. Very often, a pilot script will not really reflect the show as a whole. Often the pilot doesn't quite get the tone that it's going to have later because it's so busy jamming in introductory stuff. Good pilots don't do that. Good pilots do set the tone. Breaking Bad obviously had a phenomenal pilot. The Sopranos had an amazing pilot. The Good Place, Mr. Robot, Euphoria, BoJack Horseman, all the good shows, they have good pilots. It's rare to have a bad pilot in a good series, but it does happen. Deadwood, phenomenal pilot. Anyway, so that was the first thing I did, was to break up my outline documents because it's a little more busy here to show you, but it's a lot more practical when it comes to doing my work, to be able to say, I am just focusing on the pilot itself, the events of the pilot. So that is where I got with that. And then I began to ask myself some questions, some things to do. I can't remember if I showed you guys this, so I'm gonna show it to you now. The other day, I thought, what's the story? What's the story of Madeline and Norman? There's a story of Madeline and Norman, and there's the story of hunting the serial killer. They are interwoven, related, but I thought, what is the story of this couple in this series? And what I came to was, Madeline needs to change and grow, and Norman needs to let go of the past and his own ego. Those are the things they need, and they're going to give it to each other because she is going to see through him. She's going to poke holes in his ego and still like him, and that is going to help him to let go of his wounded pride and selfishness. And he is going to believe in her. And what I realized that means is she's a little more of the lead than he is. That this is story-wise, detective story-wise, she is the one who has the evidence, she is the one who finds the evidence, and she is the one who joins the team and sort of takes it over, which is going to be interesting. I realized that this is very much a story of Madeline learning to step up, and Norman learning to support that, to step back and to help her and to be on her side. All of these things are new for these two characters. So I typed this out one day, and then I copied it into the overview where I won't forget it. But the past few weeks, the past 20 episodes here, I finally got a sense of what the story is at the moment for these people. It's important to recognize When I say I found the story, I did not mean it was there waiting to be found and I stumbled on it or hacked my way through it. What I really did was I figured it out. I made it up. That's what you're doing when you're writing. There is no story until you make the choices. Everything is a choice, and every choice has a price. That is a big truth of my teaching. Everything is a choice, and every choice has a price. In other words, when I decide it's going to be a little more Madeline's story than Norman's, that's a price. I'm going to be taken a little off of Norman. I'm going to be tilting the story. When I decide that I'm going to have the killer be a poisoner or to have it be a killer at all, I'm making choices which are ruling out certain things and pushing me towards other things. So what I've realized, one of the things you need to do eventually is say, this is the story. This is the story of these people. This is the story of this pilot and series. And what I realized is this is the story. Madeline is going to basically become what George failed to be, what she had no respect for at all. She's going to do this partly out of simply the belief that it's the right thing to do, and partly because there's a killer coming after them, and she has to stop him. So that is where I got with the story, and that left me with a couple of things to do. The first is I'm going to need to work on who this cop is and who the crew is that I've been just saying, oh, so-and-so, one of them is going to come and be a problem. I also need to brainstorm the names of this group. I got to give them a name. And then I thought, what is the pilot has to have a beginning, middle, and end. What is it that the pilot ends with? And the answer to that is the story of the pilot is about how Madeline goes from outsider dragged into this to joining the group and essentially taking the lead in hunting down the killer. And at the same time, Norman is falling in love with her, which is something which I initially thought happened before he even met her. Realized that is just not going to work, partly because we don't have the real estate, the time, the land to work in, because they've got to get together. And the other thing is, it felt like he needed to get to know her. So by the end of the story, he's beginning to fall in love with her. The end of the pilot. This is the story of the pilot. What happens in the pilot? Madeline gets dragged into and takes charge a bit, and Norman commits to Madeline. That's where I got to with that. I am going to briefly stop here to answer a question from Mayank. Can you please explain the context, content, and purpose of a scene? Do you mean any scene? Let me know. Do you mean like the basics of a scene? Since I often do, I will spend a lot of time saying, think in scenes. So it would be a legit question. What is a scene? Let me know if that's what you meant. I await that. In the meantime, I'm going to do a little brainstorming. I'm actually working on a video about brainstorming, so I am going to... oh, that's a goodie. Forgot about that. Why don't they take the evidence to the cops? And the answer is... the cop. That's the answer. The answer is there's got to be something with the cop. Okay. Yes, the basics of the scene. Here's the deal with scenes. A scene is basically... let's set this aside. A scene is basically an action. It's organized around an action, a dramatic action, not necessarily an action like a car chase, but someone is trying to accomplish something and they're doing something to get something. And a scene is that in a time and place. The way that you divide scenes in a script, those slug lines, is when you are substantially changing the time or the location. That's when you have a new slug line. I talked about this in my video about format. The slug line, the scene line, the interior, exterior, castle, night, that thing, that shows up when you are breaking time or location. If you are going from here in my office to the grocery store, that would be a new scene. Likewise, if I was sitting here and then I'm going to be here, but it's nighttime, it would be a new scene. If you're breaking time or location, that's what basically defines a scene. There's lots of little fidgety things that you can do with that, but the truth is, if you needed a definition, a scene is going to happen in one place, in one time, and it's going to be about, at heart, somebody trying to accomplish something, taking some action to get something done. Now, often you can have many actions in a scene, but there's almost always one that's more important than the others. If you find yourself writing a scene which has a whole bunch of different actions, like really, really different actions, you're probably going to break up that scene. For example, suppose you were telling a story and it was at a wedding. There was a sequence in a wedding. A sequence is a bunch of scenes connected together by time or action. And so suppose you're at a wedding, and at one part of the wedding you have a couple falling in love, and another part you have one of the waiters is trying to steal the wallet out of a drunk visitor. And in another part of the wedding, you have people who have not met in 20 years. So there's 3 scenes happening at the same wedding. So the way you do that is you break that up. Even though it is one place at one time, it's actually 3 places, because the 3 different people doing the 3 different things, the ones meeting, the ones breaking up, and the ones stealing, they're actually in different parts of the same location. So you think of that as different places. 3 scenes. So that's the idea of a scene. A scene can be somebody comes and mails a letter. That can be a scene. They have the intention, I want to mail a letter. We see them going to the post office and putting the letter in the mailbox. It's going to be a short scene, unless there's something happening at the mailbox and they can't get to it. It might get more complicated, but the action of that scene is mailing the letter. Another scene, somebody is coming, like I said, they're at a wedding and they want to steal somebody's wallet. You're going to have the scene of them trying to get the wallet, talking to someone, making a distraction, etc., etc. That is a scene. It's a single action. There's lots more to discuss about this if you guys have other questions about scenes, but that's the basic. It's a thing that happens in one time and one place, and there is at least one action in it. If there's more than one of them is central. When you are going in to pitch, how do you prepare? That's a good question. I actually think that I'm going to hold that one until we get to the end of this series of lectures, because of lectures. Oh, fancy. You know, these videos that I'm doing where I'm showing you how I'm working. Because one of the things I'm going to do is set up, I showed that I'm dividing the outline into the pilot outline and the outline, which is the rest of the story, the spare parts, the entire rest of the series. That is going to become a pitch document. It's going to become a proposal for the series. And when I do that, I'm going to talk about how you would pitch that. At the moment, I can just say, to prepare a pitch, the main thing you want to do is you want to keep it very, very simple in terms of the things you have to memorize or know. and you should do it over and over and over again. Practice it. Ideally, practice it with people who will not make you uncomfortable, but try telling it to other people because it really helps to practice telling. I've gotten pretty good at doing that on paper. It just helps me. I feel terrible when I obligate people to have to listen to my pitch, but it's always good to practice it. So, how do you think in scenes? Do you plan or outline the idea of thinking in scenes? No, you can't. You can't outline the idea of it. You can outline the scenes. That's how you think in scenes. If you keep working in the outline, if everything is moving towards the outline document, the document where you are explaining to yourself what the scenes are, like this. If you work in an outline format that breaks things into scenes, you'll start to think in scenes. So if you have something that you want to put in here, like the cop is a jerk. Okay, so you got this idea that you want in your script. The cop is a jerk. He can't be trusted. You're going to need to find a way to put that into a scene, a time and a place and an action where the character does that, where he does being a jerk. And that's the main thing about an outline, is that you are going from a state of being to an action. He will have to behave like a jerk. He will have to do something jerky if that was the point of that scene. Always be thinking in scenes. Always be saying, I have this stuff and I want to get it into an action. Madeline discovers George's clue. That's an action. Norman explains about his book. That's an action. I want people to know about his life, so I'm going to have him explain about his book. That's the action he takes. That's the scene. We are heading towards the end of a half hour, so I'm going to be stopping soon. Are there any other questions you guys have before I do a little brainstorming of crime site names? Because that's one of the things I have to do, is you have to brainstorm. You just have to think, like crime beaters, and then crime town. One of the things that I try and do is just like the online defenders, investigations, sleuths. Well, sleuths, I know there is one called sleuths. Brainstorming requires you to just throw down everything you can, and then eventually you're gonna have to think, okay, what is it? Because the big problem with brainstorming is, especially now, so much has been done. So many people are writing so many things and setting up so many websites. It's really hard to find one that isn't already copyrighted by someone else. And so maybe it's Watson and Holmes, or Clue. I'm trying to think of every word related to detecting. Detect, hunt, stoppers, nah. Illuminators, spotlight, searchlight, spotlight. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a lot of words, and then I'm going to later come back to it and throw them out. Hopefully this will just get me started on it's puzzle, but that sounds too cute. The biggest thing that you have to watch out for when you're brainstorming is you just think immediately, oh, that's just not going to work. Leave it in there anyway. You never know. Putting it together. Crowdsourcing. Not sure yet. I'm just beginning to try and think about stuff. How to avoid cliche. Is there any trick? This is a good question. This is a good one. How do you avoid cliches? The first thing is you got to know them. The more you know, the more you see, the more you can recognize. Because the first time you see a cliche, you don't know it's a cliche. You think, oh, that's brilliant. That's cool. And it is cool. Most things that are cliches started out really original. They started out really cool. And then after a while, they just get overused. A cliche is simply something that has been overused. It's usually a good thing that has been overused. Because why would it get overused if it was bad? So the best way to avoid cliches is to be really fluent, really aware of what's going on. Like if you should watch as much of the genre and style and content that you are trying to do as you can. There's too much in the world to watch everything. If you're really into Westerns, it's going to be hard to just keep up with the Westerns. So what I would say is focus in your world, the world of your art, and try to be sure that you are keeping up with it, that you are seeing what's coming out. You may not like it, you may want to go against it, but you will not be able to tell if you are using a used up idea unless you have really kept on. Now, there is one cool thing about cliches. When they get old enough, they get new again. You know, there's stuff that was a cliche 50 years ago. It's kind of cool now. It's either retro and hip, or it's just forgotten and you can use it again. So cliches are a thing of the moment. The latest cutting edge thing will become a cliche. You can do your best to try and keep up with it, is all I can say. Watch the stuff you want to make. Watch the genre, watch the style, be very aware of what's going on in your chosen field. Even if you don't think it's good, you still need to watch it. You still need to know how it works. You need to take it seriously because somebody thought it was good enough to make. And it's important to take that seriously because somebody put money behind that. Somebody said, of the dozen slots we have on our streaming service, we're giving one to this. So there we go. It is the end of the hour, the half hour, and I appreciate you guys coming. I hope that you will come again and ask more questions.